Strikes continue to rain down on Iran even as U.S. President Donald Trump repeated claims that a deal could be reached soon to end the war. U.S. President Donald Trump said he would have no problem with a Russian oil tanker delivering relief to Cuba, which has been heavily affected by a U.S. oil blockade.
European markets opened lower on Monday as investor sentiment remains cautious amid rising oil prices and geopolitical tensions in the Middle East.
Strikes continued to rain down on Iran overnight, even as U.S. President Donald Trump repeated claims that a deal could be reached soon to end the war. Iran's energy ministry reported power outages in the capital Tehran and surrounding areas following attacks on electricity industry facilities. Kuwait said one worker was killed after a retaliatory strike hit a power station and water desalination site. And Saudi Arabia said its forces detected and intercepted 5 ballistic missiles.
And we will probably, I think we'll make a deal with them, pretty sure. Whether it's possible, we won't. But we've had regime change, if you look already, because the one regime was decimated, destroyed, they're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change.
The Speaker of Iran's parliament accused Washington of using diplomacy as a smokescreen as it warned against a possible ground invasion. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced plans on Sunday to expand his country's ground invasion of southern Lebanon. Across the region, the death toll continues to rise as the war grinds on into its second month. Despite making diplomatic overtures, the United States has also been sending more military assets into the region. According to the Washington Post, the Pentagon was preparing plans for weeks of ground operations, potentially including raids on sites near the Strait of Hormuz, though Trump has not yet approved any deployment. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Sunday he would have no problem with a Russian oil tanker off the coast of Cuba delivering relief to the island, which has been heavily affected by a U.S. oil blockade. He appeared to confirm reports that a sanctioned Russian oil tanker was just off the eastern tip of the island and expected to arrive there by Tuesday.
Well, we have a tanker out there. We don't mind having somebody get a boatload because they have to survive. It wouldn't bother me.
That report is true as far as you know.
Well, I would say, I told them, if a country wants to send some oil into Cuba right now, I have no problem with it.
Do you worry that that's not
Whether it's Russia or no.
Experts say the anticipated shipment could produce about 180,000 barrels of diesel, enough to feed Cuba's daily demand for 9 or 10 days. The U.S. blockade has had a devastating effect on the island's civilians, who suffer from long blackouts and a lack of resources that has pushed the nation to the brink of collapse. A growing number of countries and aid organizations, as well as a civilian flotilla, have stepped up efforts to bring aid to the island as the UN warns of a deepening humanitarian crisis.
European markets are off to a slow start on Monday, with futures pointing to declines across major indices as investor sentiment remains cautious amid geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. It comes as U.S. President Donald Trump raised the possibility of U.S. forces seizing Iran's Karg Island, the country's main oil terminal, and as concerns grow that Tehran's proxies may again try to block Red Sea shipping routes. As of early morning trading, Germany's DAX was down around 0.5%, the FTSE 100 fell roughly 0.3%, and France's CAC 40 was also in the negative territory, according to IG data. The weaker outlook follows losses in Asia, where shares mostly dipped overnight as concerns persisted around soaring oil prices and the potential for further escalation in the U.S. war with Iran. Steep losses on Wall Street on Friday marked a fifth consecutive losing week, the longest such streak in nearly 4 years. Investor worries have been particularly acute due to the risk of disrupted access to the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global oil shipments. The possibility of further disruption to global oil shipments escalated during the weekend as Iran-backed Houthi militants fired missiles and drones at Israel and promised to continue their attacks.
Millions of people took to the streets across the United States to participate in the more than 3,100 protests taking place against U.S. President Donald Trump. The rallies denounced what they described as an authoritarian style of governance by the incumbent administration, their immigration stance, climate change denial, isolationist foreign policy, and now the war in Iran. In New York, thousands gathered to protest against sweeping immigration raids carried out by ICE and called for their abolition. The rallies even featured a surprise cameo from New York native and Hollywood giant Robert De Niro. Protests also took place in the capital, Washington, D.C., where hundreds gathered near the White House demanding Trump's ouster. It's the third time in less than a year these protests, part of a U.S. grassroots movement called No Kings, take place. The demonstration spread across the pond, where thousands of Americans abroad and locals took part in rallies across Europe. In Paris, protesters called for an end to Trump's, quote, reckless, irresponsible, and endless wars. And in the Italian capital, thousands marched calling for respect of international law and demanding a world free from wars.
It's actually very calming and helping in concentrating on the work that we have to do, which is something that surprises me because normally I don't really listen to classical music, so that's a new experience for me.
The reason why music in the background can be so soothing almost is that it creates a state of flow. And flow is this mysterious balance between your level of skills and being challenged. And you want to be in that sweet spot. You don't want to be over-challenged. You don't want to be under-challenged. And I think music in the background can help you to reach a state of flow. And everybody knows when you reach a state of flow, you can go on endlessly and be enormously productive.
Oh, no, I don't think it's difficult to multitask here because it's really quiet environment and nice quiet music, so that helps me to concentrate and I'm not having any difficulties multitasking.
È un quadro che stava per essere battuto all'asta da Sotheby's e noi siamo riusciti ad acquisirlo senza che andasse all'asta, quindi con una base, diciamo, d'acquisto molto conveniente per noi, ma soprattutto molto importante per la missione di riportare in Italia un quadro di tale rilievo e di metterlo a disposizione dei cittadini.
Quindi veniva utilizzato dal proprietario per pregare, mentre guardava il Cristo e quindi pregava davanti al Cristo, quando guardava il San Girolamo lo baciava e quindi il San Girolamo è completamente abraso e questo modo di come dire, avere un contatto diretto con l'opera d'arte baciandola e toccandola, e questo ha creato però dei danni.
this crazy idea that horror is not for women or that women are not fans of horror.
There's a whole tribe of women who are just so into it.
Women practically invented the horror genre.
There's some deluded idea that talking about gender and horror is somehow a contemporary phenomenon. It's like, sit down, little boys, the grown-ups are talking.
We're expected to behave certain ways in real life, but in horror films, no holds barred.
I've always just loved horror from a very inappropriately young age.
It still gives me goosepimples.
We have a lot of fears that we want to talk about.
Horror is the critique of society, but you do it with zombies.
I love challenging the idea of what it means to be a good mother.
Women make horror movies. That's what I want to do.